Markus, we are
Hello,
live.
Heiko. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm as well. I'm fine, thank you.
You're fine.
So
thank you.
yeah, just my ears are ringing. The music of the countdown is so loud.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. It's it can make you dance and move and stuff.
Yeah,
You know?
I had to turn down the volume because it's too loud.
Okay. I see. Yeah. We don't want to damage your hearing. That's for sure.
No. Yes.
Yeah. So actually, we are. This is our third. This is our third
The third.
session, right?
Really, really nice.
Yeah, and we got some questions. So as we put out this little form to ask for questions, we actually got already, and maybe we got a few more during the live session. So that's cool because
Maybe.
the other times we had some kind of our own things to tell, but today I think we really can focus on the questions that we received from the people out there.
Yeah.
Sometimes anonymous, sometimes we at least have a first name, but all in all, I think we have a list of about maybe 10 or 12 questions or something. So I think it will be interesting to go through these questions and to see, how much we can answer. And maybe sometimes the answer is 42. I don't know.
Yeah, it's always 42.
Yeah, but so like Guy yesterday was asking for, I think, the lottery numbers for the weekend. He asked me via Twitter, where I had to tell him I'm not allowed to disclose that, but you can always use get random to find some numbers that might be lucky.
I predicted, but I tell only for a small fee. So
yeah. I mean, there has to be some motivation to do that, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so shall we start with the first question?
Sure.
What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Just let us start with the first question. And Tim asks us, I'm not using PowerShell right now. Why should I start learning it?
Ooh. I have no idea.
Me too. What is PowerShell?
What the heck is PowerShell? Okay, that's a good question.
Yeah,
I think it's a very good and important question because it's always to ask why is always a good start. So, do you want to start to comment on that?
It's really simple. PowerShell is simply cool tool. So next question.
Okay,
no.
Question answers.
No. No.
That was quick. Okay.
Why you should start learning it? Yeah. Just think about your day as an administrator. Let's say you work with your Active Directory, and what's the most common thing in Active, or if you are working with Active Directory, changing user passwords, or delete users, or create users, or stuff like that. And what are you doing when you set a new password? You go to your domain controller, you open up the Active Directory management, you search for the user, you click on the user, you set a new password, and I think it takes at least 2 minutes, 3 minutes, let's say 4 minutes or 5 minutes, and with the PowerShell, you can just fire up a commandlet with all the parameters filled in for a new password, or if you want to create a user with the username and the organizational unit and stuff like that. And I think it makes your work much easier than just click in the Active Directory management and search for the user and something like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would also add that, like, who wants to do the same thing over and over and over again, day in, day out, and instead of saving the time to do other things that are more interesting for yourself, and ideally also more important for the organization. So this, I think, this time saving aspect is really, I think, I would also say is really important. And also to kind of, I heard this this phrase, I think, in a podcast 1 or 2 years ago, where it said, it's not the time anymore to be the senior click administrator anymore. It's about
Yes.
really being as fast as possible, automate as much as possible, simply because, I mean, the infrastructure has become more and more complex, and more things that have to be done.
Yes, indeed.
In less time. So I think it, to not automate is really, and to not use PowerShell, I think it would be really a bad thing. And especially for PowerShell, I think another thing that I think is really extremely cool and helpful is the community that is out there, that is always going to help you if you have questions, no matter where you are on your PowerShell journey, if you're a beginner or an intermediate or advanced. And now, hopefully this year also, for example, are going to be the PSConf, the European PowerShell conference in Vienna, where you can meet the people, and
where you can meet me.
And they can meet you, yes. And I had the possibility to be at the PSConf in Hanover in 2019, I think it was, and it was just amazing, because you can to see that community members, interact and helping and presenting and growing together. I think that's really cool. Yes. But also, of course, I think another aspect here is that, of course, besides PowerShell, there are other technologies as well. So it also comes down to, what do you want to achieve, right? So PowerShell might be the good solution, but maybe in other cases, it might be, I don't know, might be Python or some Bash stuff if you're on Linux or something like this. So, but in general, I really would say it is, if you're not using PowerShell right now, it's a great time to start.
Yes.
Using PowerShell.
And how professional does it look if your boss or your manager comes to your office, sees your screen, and there are a lot of PowerShell windows open, and
yeah, true.
You're always looking busy.
Yeah.
Just and busy and professional.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. But there's that. Sorry.
No problem.
There is another truth in it. It's like, and I heard that from people saying, I don't care about actually the system that I manage and the UI that I manage. If I can manage with PowerShell, I only need to learn maybe a few more commandlets, and then I can start managing SQL Server or AWS or something like this. Because when I have the basic understanding, it really doesn't matter later on if it's Active Directory or if it's Exchange or Office 65 or Azure or VMware, whatever. You
can even control Spotify with PowerShell.
Did you try it already? There's a module available, right?
Yeah, I tried. So it's really cool. It doesn't match my my needs, what I want to do with the automation of Spotify, but it's a really cool thing. So you can control your Spotify app with it, and it's a pretty cool thing.
Okay, so maybe let's look for the next question. That kind of is I would say is kind of a follow up from the first one, where it's about, okay, where do I start to learn PowerShell? So given that one has decided, yes, it is, I want to start using PowerShell, where do I start learning?
That depends on what do you want to do. So I think my story of beginning with PowerShell is I just open up the Windows PowerShell. I think it was the I'm not sure if it was the version 4.0 or was it 5.0. I think it was 4.0. And I just opened up the PowerShell terminal and started and looked for some basic commandlets and just fire them against my local system. And I saw, okay, it's a cool thing. So you can do all of the stuff you normally do with your mouse or with a GUI. You can do it with a PowerShell. And I was really curious about what else can I do with it. And then I began to write some small, really small scripts. And yeah, that was my journey. So learning by doing.
Yeah, I think that's the best advice. So it was the same for me, actually, a little bit way back in time with Exchange 2007, where it PowerShell got introduced, and I think, as I mentioned it in the previous session, but it's for me it wasn't really love at first sight, because I was like wondering why I can't do this in the GUI anymore. Where do I have to use this thing called PowerShell? But of course, very quickly when I had multiple machines to manage, of course it clicked, and it was like, okay, that's really cool. That really helps. And I think I would say, okay, take a real life example. So not just start learning PowerShell for the sake of learning PowerShell, but really have a goal, have a use case, have something that annoys you every day because you do it by hand every day or every week, and you're like, oh my God, there should be a way to automate that. And then the way I think the people learn can be, of course, is different. So there might be people who want to start watching videos or reading books. Becoming part of the community, and actually, what I when I joined, before I joined Scriptrunner 3 years ago, I kind of I was in the process of kind of refreshing the PowerShell stuff, and I came across this set of videos with Jason Helmick and Jeffrey Snower. And I think we can put this maybe even in the chat here. And it is on YouTube, and it was just so not only interesting but also entertaining, because these two guys really, I mean, Jeffrey Snover, as the one who invented PowerShell, of course, was there, and he did. I mean, who better to ask how PowerShell works than the inventor of it? So that was really something that I liked. That I spent the whole weekend going through all these videos. But they start at the very beginning, and then they it's about something. Then they cover PowerShell remoting and all that stuff. And for me, that was really a good starting point. But then there are books like, do I have it here? No, I don't have. No, here it is. Yeah. Learn PowerShell in a Month of Lunches. That's, I think, one of the standard books written by Don Jones and Jeffrey Hicks. But I think YouTube is really also a good source, and become part of the PowerShell community. Go to Twitter. You will meet a lot of people that are into PowerShell. Follow the hashtag PowerShell, and you will immediately start meeting people that are in the topic. And maybe follow Markus or
Heiko.
Yeah, maybe that would be a good time to look at this. So
but I think so Twitter is always a good starting point for getting into the PowerShell community. But as for programming language or for every problem in the IT, let's say, you can always join Stack Overflow. There's also a really huge PowerShell community, very friendly and very helpful. And yeah,
absolutely.
Yes. So, and yeah, you can read, there are so much blog articles out there. Yeah, so I think that are really good sources for PowerShell material and for start the learning journey.
Maybe another thing that I could do, because actually I have been asked several times on LinkedIn, interestingly enough, by people, and I started to put together a list of resources like videos and articles and stuff like that, and it might be helpful for.
And I can recommend a book. Just let me get it.
Okay, Markus is off. Okay, leaving stage, exit stage, left.
just for a second. So it's from Adam Bertrand, PowerShell for sysadmins.
Okay.
Really, really helpful. So there are a lot of recipes for PowerShell script and for automating stuff.
Okay, so, cool. Yeah. Adam the Automator. Yeah, also.
Adam the Automator,
yeah. Someone that is definitely worth following on Twitter and also looking at and following his website, actually.
Yes.
All right. So why not maybe move on to the next question, no?
Yes. Just it's your turn.
It's my turn.
Or
okay.
Or is it mine?
It doesn't matter. So the
no, it's my turn. It's my turn.
Okay, sorry.
You took the second. Yeah, okay. Just let me. It was a rough day.
Well, we get it done. We get it done. No worries.
We get it done. Yeah. So, is PowerShell good for managing Linux and macOS machines? So, Heiko, what are you saying to Linux?
Okay, that's okay. Okay, people who don't know, the people who don't know me by wondering why you said that with a cheeky smile, but because I have to admit I'm not the biggest Linux fan, so now it's out. Okay, so that's why I cannot really comment or show anything really with PowerShell and Linux and macOS. But of course, I can say that since Microsoft made PowerShell open source and open up to Linux and macOS, I think it really it's coming back to the first question. I think why should I start learning PowerShell? I think that's now that is another good answer, because it's not just about Windows anymore, because you can use your skill set once you're familiar with PowerShell, also to manage Linux and macOS systems, and I think that's really a cool thing.
Yes, it is. So yeah, I basically I'm also I'm not the daily Linux user. I use it. Most of the time I use it with a WSL2 in Windows, but yeah, just I use it with virtual machines, but not as my daily OS. But I work with PowerShell on macOS a lot, and yeah, the answer for this question is simply is good for managing macOS or Linux. So
okay, so would you
I
also
can recommend it? Yeah,
that let's say if you're a a veteran Linux admin working with Bash for the last 20 years, is it it's different, right? Because you have this object-oriented approach with PowerShell, which is different, like with Bash, where you have just text files actually. But it's still, I think it's I would say, as you say, I think it's just also belongs to the toolbox. And so I think there are two directions. One is, okay, you are already you're knowing PowerShell from the Windows world. Then, of course, if now all of a sudden, because for whatever reason now you also have to manage Linux, it's the perfect technology because you're already familiar with it. But I think it also has advantages for people who are already in the Linux world for quite some time. And I think it's also worth for these people to look into PowerShell as well. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you do not have to use a Windows computer for managing, let's say, Azure services or an Exchange Online or something like that. So, yeah, you can always do it over the browser with the web interface. But if you're more into using the terminal, so now you will be able to manage all the Azure services with the PowerShell on other OSs beside Windows. And yeah, I think it's a cool thing on macOS. I just can't speak for macOS. I've tried the PowerShell with one or two commands in Linux, but as I said, I'm not a daily Linux user, but it's on macOS, it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next question. It's from Chris. Okay, so now
you just sorry for interrupt you, but what is the easiest way to install PowerShell on macOS? So
I skipped one. Okay,
you skipped.
I'm sorry. Okay. Oh yes, important question. Okay, what is the easiest way to install PowerShell on Mac OS? I think you're the right guy to ask this question, to answer this question, basically.
Yeah, the easiest way is to install it with the famous macOS Package Manager Homebrew. So you can just, if you have installed Homebrew or if you're using Homebrew, you can just smash brew, install PowerShell into your terminal, and the PowerShell gets installed. And after the installation, you just I think it's PWSH you have to enter in your terminal, and the PowerShell starts, and then you are ready to use the PowerShell. So I think that's the most easiest way. And on Linux, I think it's the same, but not with Homebrew, with another package manager.
Yeah. Okay.
What is the one phone? What is the one you are using with, let's say, with Ubuntu? It's not Pacman. I think that is for Arch Linux. What is the one? What is the one on Ubuntu? Just package. Let me Google that.
Well, we can, and people can always again follow you on Twitter and DM you. So to get in touch with you to
APT. Yeah, APT is APT, the package manager. APT get. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anyway, they can always follow you and get in touch with you.
Yes.
If they have more questions regarding, for example, PowerShell and macOS. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So now the next question. It's your turn, right? Or did we totally mix it up now?
I think we totally mixed it up. So
we totally screwed it. I screwed it, actually. I'm so sorry.
No, just yeah. I mentioned the last question you skipped, so now it's your turn. Just ask the question Chris asked us.
Okay, Markus, I'll ask the question. So here's the question from Chris. And now we are kind of moving. So it's related to our script runner solution. So, and the question is, does script runner support PowerShell 7 in brackets core? I would say yes.
Yes. I'm not sure. No, joke. Yeah, it supports PowerShell 7. So you You can just switch if you're familiar with PowerShell, and if you're familiar with how script runner works. You can always switch in the configuration of your queries and your action to PowerShell 7. It's just a checkbox where you can set your tick, and then it works with the PowerShell 7 host.
Yeah, and I think that it's also important to mention that, of course, you can use Windows PowerShell and PowerShell 7 in parallel. Because I don't think that there are many shops out there who switch to PowerShell 7 100%. We just actually did a webinar where we asked these questions to the audience are you using Windows PowerShell or PowerShell 7 or both? And it was a mix. And and there were only a few that said, okay, we are using only PowerShell 7. So, but of course, as Microsoft is more and more investing, or is only investing into PowerShell 7 and not in Windows PowerShell, I think this will be probably just a matter of time that more and more PowerShell 7 will be used. And so that's why, Script Runner, of course, supports both. One important thing is, of course, let's say if you're doing something with a particular module, you have to make sure if you're switching from Windows PowerShell to PowerShell 7 in Script Runner that you have the module installed in both worlds, so to speak, so that the command that will actually be able to be executed successfully.
Yes. So next question, or
let's move on.
It's okay. It's from Anonymous. How does Script Runner compare to Azure Automation and Azure Functions? A big one. Okay. It's a big one. Okay. So how can we compare it? So I think shall we alternate with our answers, or?
I could start with a let's say again a general comment on using Script Runner compared to, for example, things like Azure Automation or Azure Functions. I mean, Script Runner is really specialized on doing everything around PowerShell, which of course includes doing things in and for the Azure platform. But of course, it can be anything else. It can be VMware, it can be SharePoint, SQL, whatever. And of course, it can be on premises, it can be hybrid in the cloud. So from this perspective, really comparing maybe is a little bit difficult because they're just different scopes, different solutions for different problems or for different jobs. But of course, there are things where you can also combine things like Azure Automation and Azure Functions with PowerShell, meaning also then, of course, with Script Runner. I think it also depends on actually the infrastructure. So if you're a complete Azure shop and Azure shop only, then using Azure Automation, Azure Functions might be a good choice. But also, of course, take a look at the costs, because even though it's available, most of it doesn't come for free from Microsoft. So this is another aspect that needs to be addressed, I would say.
Yeah, that's right. And the costs that are sometimes they are high. behind some really basic things you want to use. I had a use case from it's not actually a customer, but he's interested, or the company was interested in ScriptRunner, and they are using MS Teams to control different things like Citrix sessions or something like that, and there are you have different possibilities to do this with Power Automate and Azure Functions and the Microsoft bot framework. But the most easiest way to push commands with a Teams chat or channel to another system is the Microsoft Power Virtual Agents. I think that's correct. Yeah, and these are really expensive. And I think
okay.
And the other thing is you have with ScriptRunner a centralized platform to do your stuff, and with Azure Automation and Azure Functions and Power Automate and what else, you have a lot of different web interfaces to do a lot of stuff, and you have to learn much more, I think, than if you're using ScriptRunner. Yeah, but it depends on your use cases. So
So again, and if PowerShell is your go-to technology for automation, I think, I would say ScriptRunner is just a natural fit, because this gives you everything that helps you to manage everything in a proper way.
Yeah. So there's no complete comparison.
As always,
for all that things. So
and as you said, it depends on what do you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it.
Yes.
Okay. Shall we move on to the next question?
Yes.
So it's my turn, right?
It's your.
All right. Okay. I'm confused.
Not sure. Yeah, it's your turn.
But anyway, okay. So the question is, okay, is PowerShell still heavily supported by Microsoft? Okay, that's an interesting question. I mean, the fact that this question comes up already is interesting, because as we said earlier on, PowerShell got invented by Jeffrey Snover, who was and still is with Microsoft, not in the PowerShell team, somewhere else, but he's still the main figure, I would say, that everybody knows. Do you have an opinion on that, or should I start?
I'm not quite sure how to answer this question. So,
okay.
Who else shall heavily support PowerShell if not Microsoft?
That's true. And I think that again, the reason for this question might be that if you're looking, not from inside the PowerShell bubble, but from the outside world, you might get the impression that Microsoft is, at least sometimes, promoting other technologies more than PowerShell. So things like Python, for example, or
something like Azure CLI, or
if you look at Azure, okay. So you're and I had a talk with a guy a few weeks ago, where this came up as well, where he also said, okay, sometimes he has the impression that PowerShell is not a first-class citizen anymore for Microsoft. But I think that's not true. That's really not true. But of course, there are other technologies that Microsoft is also heavily involved. For example, Python. For example, having the Azure CLI. But of course, there is the PowerShell team at Microsoft, which, by the way, has also a monthly community call where everybody can join, which is, I think, quite helpful, quite interesting, because you get direct contact to the product group by Microsoft, from the people who are actually writing and developing PowerShell, and so that's really that can be quite very interesting and helpful, depending on what kind of information you're also maybe looking for, or the questions you would like to ask. Maybe a question like this, so I would say Microsoft is, maybe, how to put it, maybe if the technology landscape becomes more maybe diverse, that maybe would be a word to say that. So there is, and I think there always will be PowerShell, because it's baked into every PowerShell into every Microsoft product, right? In the cloud, on premises. But of course, they are also aiming to get people interested into Microsoft when they are into Python, because it might be, or it was probably is a good solution, good technology, if you are in the area of data science or something like this. But yeah, we see sometimes discussions on Twitter as well, once in a while, that somebody starts a discussion like, why is a new functionality published and promoted first for the CLI and then for PowerShell. But that might be the case sometimes, but it's still, you can, the features typically are there's some parity between the CLI and PowerShell. And then again, it comes to what you said earlier on. It's like, okay, what you prefer, what is your goal? But I think maybe one could say, okay, maybe we would wish that Microsoft would show some more love to PowerShell, but it is, I think there's no reason to believe that, okay, PowerShell will go away and Microsoft is not going to support PowerShell. I think it's,
indeed,
especially with PowerShell 7, I think it's just the other way around. They came up with the secrets management module. They came up now with Crescendo and stuff like that. So there's things moving forward. So that already shows that, of course, as you said, Microsoft supports PowerShell quite a lot. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I fully go with you on this question. Yeah. So what one? I think it's compared to let's say Azure CLI. Azure CLI is a great tool, but I think using PowerShell is more convenient, because I do most of my stuff with the PowerShell, and I have it already open. So if I want to connect to Azure and do something, I use the PowerShell. I don't want to switch to the Azure CLI. If I'm working in the browser and I have to open up the PowerShell, I think about using the Azure CLI, but most of the time the PowerShell is open, and
then it's
I import the module I want to use, and I use the PowerShell. So there's for me no other reason to use another tool.
Yeah. So I think that's because we are familiar with it. It might be different for other people, and maybe and so maybe for being on the command line, using Azure CLI to do something very quickly might be a good thing if we think about really scripting and more complex use cases. I also think, of course, PowerShell is the right thing, but maybe both of us are a little biased because we are into PowerShell. But anyway, that's our opinion, right? Okay, so shall we move on to the next question, because as time flies by so quickly.
Yes, sure. Torsten asks, right now I'm storing my scripts on my OneDrive. Where should I store my scripts? as nearly every question in the IT, it depends.
It depends.
It depends. Yeah. If you can. So, do you want to answer? But yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, as you said, it depends. And I think one aspect where it depends fits very well is like, okay, is it just you who is using the scripts? Or are you in a team where other team members should start using your scripts, because that might or most probably will have an impact on the answer, because if it's just you, maybe even OneDrive is still okay, because you probably know you have maybe a folder structure, and you know there are my AD scripts, and there are my Exchange scripts, and there are my Azure scripts, and that might be totally okay. Now, if you think about bringing in somebody else and maybe another team members and stuff like that, then I would say that looking at things like GitHub, for example, could be a good starting point, because that also gives you the possibility to easily to start sharing scripts. And that might open up a whole new world of you getting maybe feedback from people, and they're giving you ideas like, okay, you're doing something this way, but have you thought about doing it this way because it's easier or it's faster and stuff like that. So that's when when you're moving from, okay, it's just a one-man show or one-woman show to, okay, it's something that I even want to share. I want to share with the community because I want to give something back, or which typically happens. You want to get some feedback, and maybe learn. And so I would say, Git is a good way. And then, of course, coming back to our script runner solution, it's also a good way. Maybe you want to comment on that, Markus?
Yeah, sure. So you can combine them, a Git like service like GitHub or Gitbucket or GitLab or whatever kind of Git service you want to use to combine with the script runner script repository. So as Heiko said, if you have a few team members who are also writing scripts or working with you on your scripts, I think it's the best way to do so with a source control system like Git or whatever most comforts your needs. And I think that's a great way to manage your scripts. Just throw it to OneDrive or to a network share or something like that. It's always possible, but that's no fun. There you can if you put it in a network share to share it with your team members, that's not really funny. And
and you're getting into trouble when thinking about versions, and you did something and you want to go back to an earlier version, and then if you do it on OneDrive or on a share, of course you have to always, every time you make a change, think about, okay, I have to make a save as with maybe a version info in the script name and stuff like that. So again, it might be something that you want to do when you start using PowerShell, but when you really want to do it on a more
professional way,
on a professional level, absolutely. Then as you said, Git or something like this is definitely a good.
Some Git-based servers are always good for source control. And don't write your scripts with Word or something like that. That's also not funny.
Or Notepad or something. So I was just looking at we already just hitting the 45 minutes mark. So I would say, why not end with one last question that we received here from Patrick. what is the coolest thing you saw / you did in PowerShell?
I do everything cool, every day cool stuff with PowerShell, so that's really hard to answer.
Of course,
no.
Of course. So for using PowerShell is always cool, absolutely. But so one thing, or actually two things, but it's by the same guy. I would answer it in a way of what I saw, because the things that I do in PowerShell, maybe they're cool, maybe they're just not that cool. But I saw an MVP doing really interesting stuff, put it this way, with PowerShell. It's actually I saw it as well as I mentioned earlier on on the PS Conf in Hanover in 2019, and it was about managing. There were two things. One thing was managing a Lego robot called Mr. Bricks with PowerShell, together with things like Azure Functions and stuff like that. And the other thing was, and I think it was called, the session is on YouTube. I think I have the link somewhere. It was called Last Night the DJ Saved My Life, and it was about controlling a DJ app with a PowerShell script, meaning keeping the beats per minute in sync with a PowerShell script. I think I have the link somewhere. I will put it into the chat. So that was really cool, because it's like, I would call it, these are edge cases, right? Because normally nobody would start doing this thing with PowerShell, but because he is so much into PowerShell, by the way, his name is Jacob Gottlieb Svensson. He's from Denmark, I think. And so because he is already into PowerShell, I thought and he's into music, so I thought he was kind of bringing together this two of his passions, and make it something that you can do with PowerShell. And I think that's, for me, I was like, I thought that it's pretty inspiring, because the question is, do I have to do it with PowerShell? Most probably not. But to show that it's possible, that was really kind of mind-blowing to see, okay, how far can you go with the technology? And then take this idea and the way that he did it, and to think about, okay, well, how could I apply maybe parts of that to the things that I do with PowerShell? Yeah.
Sounds like I cannot top these two things. So
it's not a competition, Markus. It's not a competition.
No, it's not a competition. But I think that's the coolest stuff I heard, to what you can do with PowerShell. So I have to think about, but I'm not sure. No. That's not the stuff I do in my daily work. So,
we do serious stuff with PowerShell, right? We do serious stuff only with PowerShell. So
yeah, let's say it like that.
Yeah, let's keep it like this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think that maybe because we're already hitting now the 50 minutes mark, I didn't even expect that it will take more than 30 minutes to go through the questions, but that's how it is. But I think it was fun. So, and there are still a few questions that we might just keep for the next session. Yes. So we have something in the arsenal, and waiting, of course, for other questions, for new questions as well. So I would say that's it for today. Thank you, Markus. It was fun as always.
Thank you. Yes, it was a pleasure as always.
Of course. Oh my God, thank you. All right, so guys out there, thanks for joining, and see you next time.
Keep on scripting.
Keep on scripting.